This year is a landmark year for TCL because finally in 2025, TCL has flipped the script, no longer copying the industry leaders, but itself becoming a leader in its own right. This is what I mean. TCL has been learning from the best for years now. Let's say since 2018 with the 6 series, they saw what Sony and Samsung did so well with LCD TVs, right? And they learned, they improved, copied, learned, improved. Rinse and repeat that process over 7 years. Fast forward to today. And what happens when you've successfully copied what the best have done to the point where, well, what's next? Innovation. And it begins with this entry-level TV, the Mini LED TCL QM6K. It gets all the essentials right. Bravo TCL. Let's get into it. Hey friends, want to upgrade to Windows 11 Pro but can't afford the official price of $199? How about $21 or Windows 10 for $16 with my discount code SF20? Thanks to our sponsor, Whokeys. Yes, Black Friday is here. Get an additional 30% off with my code SF20. Go to Whokeys.com, add Windows 11 Pro to your cart, apply my discount code SF20, and bam, only $21. Here's how we activate it. Go to your Whokeys account at the top right under User Center, click on My Purchased Orders, click on View Keys and Code, click Get the Key, copy the Windows 11 Pro key under Code Card, then go to your system settings, scroll down and click Activation, click Change Product Key, paste the key code, click Next, and you're done. So don't miss out on these amazing deals. Click on my links in the video description below. Today, we review the TCL QM6K. This is their entry-level mini LED TV. Now, when I say entry-level, it's still a very good TV for most people. But you need to understand that being entry-level, there are corners being cut. So what TCL has to do is decide what are the essentials to get right and what are the corners that they can cut or pull back. And it's okay for most people because, well, you might not notice those corners being cut, which is why we have the Bravia 9, Sony's flagship mini LED TV, which I consider the best mini LED TV sold in 2024, about 3 times the cost of the QM6K. It's between $2,700, $3,000 about there, whereas the QM6K launching at $999, likely to drop closer to $700 or $800 by summer, so it's about 3 times more expensive. The question is, the corners that are being cut on the QM6K, are they important to you? And that's why the Bravia 9 is here. It's to show you, okay, if you were to cut no corners, that's what it would look like. And it's very content dependent, because in some content that you will see, wait a minute, these two TVs look exactly the same. If that's the content you watch more often than not, of course, you go with the less expensive TV because you can't tell the difference. But there will be content where you're like, oh yeah, I see where the money is going with the Bravia 9. But if you never watched that content in the first place, what's the point? Is it relevant to you? So let's get into the comparisons and you tell me whether TCL made the right decisions on which corners to cut and which strengths to show off. Starting with old TV shows, streaming Family Affair with Uncle Bill and Sissy on Amazon Prime Video. What you'll notice immediately is that the QM6K is not as bright as the Bravia 9. This is because out of the box, its brightness is set at 30, so you'll need to take it up to 100 if you're in a normally lit room. Also notice that even at 100, the QM6K doesn't get quite as bright as the Bravia 9, which indeed gets a bit brighter in HDR content. These are the other available settings out of the box, and it's awesome to see that the default settings in Filmmaker mode are spot on. And what about all this noise and digital artifact from upscaling a low quality source? After trying all the different noise reduction features on the QM6K, the most effective is gradation clear on high, leaving the Bravia 9 unchanged so you can see how it affects the original source material. Some of you may prefer the cleaned up version in this setting, but as you'll see in this next old school TV show, Columbo, you will lose some detail with gradation clear set to high. Look at the ceiling tiles. Turning it down to low brings back the ceiling tiles. But enough of this locker room scene. What about skin tones? In this next scene, you'll notice that the QM6K is mostly spot on with a touch of warmth compared to the Bravia 9. Just a touch. Unlike past TCL TVs, this extra warmth is only noticeable when placed next to a more accurate Bravia 9, and this is only noticeable on slightly paler faces like the ladies of Charmed, but on more sun-kissed complexions like Wonder Woman, hello Linda Carter, nearly indistinguishable from the Bravia 9. While we're watching the original Wonder Woman, let's play with TCL's SDR to HDR conversion. This feature is not available in filmmaker mode, so we have to go to movie mode to turn it on. I'm impressed that it's only a subtle shift, dropping the lower shadows, maybe a stop, half a stop, to accentuate the contrast and pop. This is subtle, and I personally would keep it on for many of these older shows, and much better than the most extreme contrast enhancement features. Now let's try Pluto TV, a popular free streaming TV app. Red dot looks great. How about sports in vivid mode? Bravia 9 is indeed a little brighter, but not by much. Going through the various picture modes, Vivid does give you the brightest image for sports on the QM6K. Although it appears the QM6K looks eerily similar to Sony's Vivid mode, we need to look at skin tones to see if this is so. Switching to news while still in Vivid mode, we do see that the Sony has kept some warmth for the skin tones in Vivid mode, while the TCL looks a bit cooler. But when both TVs are in their more accurate movie modes, they appear more alike than different. Remember, the Sony in SDR is a bit brighter, so you'll think that the QM6K has better contrast, but it does not. Both look identical. It's just the camera cannot capture the Bravia 9 fully because it's almost 2 stops brighter in SDR. So my camera made it look a little overexposed and undersaturated, when in fact, both look nearly identical. But that's an SDR. What happens if we go to HDR content? Like the Umbrella Academy on Netflix, and this strip scene says it all. At first glance, they are very similar, especially the dancer, but look at the specular highlights and you'll see better specular detail on the Bravia 9, flexing its dimming zones. Now let's move on to even higher quality HDR content on Kaleidoscape, beginning with Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. In this bright opening scene, I'm shocked to find the QM6K is actually brighter. Checking the Bravia 9 settings to make sure everything is correct, and checking the QM6K, oh wait, it switched over to IMAX. Let's bring it back to the more accurate filmmaker mode, and yep, QM6K indeed has a higher full screen brightness in this scene, and this scene does require the TV to hit the brightest possible full screen brightness. How strange that the QM6K gets brighter in HDR full screen, but not SDR. Moving on to pan. Flying into the sun, we do see the Sony Bravia 9 killing it with both brightness and specular detail, here and here in the sun. This is why you pay for extra dimming zones, my friends. The hardware difference can only be seen in these challenging types of HDR specular highlights. Speaking of challenging scenes, how about shadow detail, beginning with Dune? My favorite scene for shadow detail because we are most sensitive to differences in facial contours and lighting. Here you see TCL saturated red a bit more clearly, but shadow detail is very close to the Bravia 9. Now look at the specular highlights in this scene. Brighter than the Bravia 9, but the trade-off is elsewhere, as you'll see in the next movie, 1917. Nevertheless, this shadow detail is so close to the Sony and a definite improvement over last year's QM7 and QM8, both of which had way more dimming zones. Such an impressive improvement for the QM6K. But let's push performance harder with 1917, and this is where TCL's fewer dimming zones just can't keep up. You lose black levels, contrast, and shadow detail compared to the Bravia 9. This scene is why enthusiasts pay the premium for the Bravia 9. Now let's use the Wizard of Oz to check off-angle color saturation on the QM6K. Remember that the Bravia 9 had the best off-angle color saturation among all LCD TVs last year, while the QM7 was among the worst. And wow, TCL totally fixed it this year as the QM6K has now caught up with the Sony flagship LCD TV craziness. Next up, console gaming on the PS5 Pro playing Black Myth Wukong. I love the game bar setting as well as the frame rate displayed above, which can be turned on and off. You'll notice immediately that in their most accurate HDR settings, the QM6K is slightly brighter. Bravia 9 can get brighter in other game modes, but they don't look as good as this standard mode. Not only is the image quality for console gaming phenomenal on QM6K, but latency is as good as it gets for an LCD TV. Although I did capture this in 4K 120, and the TVs look identical as far as latency is concerned, the game is only playing at 60 FPS. So if one of the TVs is faster, I'd have to test this in 4K 120 to see if there's a difference. but look at the gradation detail. A perfect match for the Bravia 9. What TCL has done with so few dimming zones on the QM6K just blows my mind. I am definitely loving this TV more and more. Let's wrap it up. And before I forget, TV audio. It rocks. TCL has consistently delivered the best audio for the price at any TV price point, and the QM6K raised the bar. It is better than the QM7K. Louder, more balanced audio, a bit more of that bass, equalizer, different sound modes. This thing is so good. I dare say it's close to the Bravia 9. So close. It's loud enough, dialogue clarity is spot on. Where does the QM6K, the bare minimum, mini LED, coming out of TCL this year, where does the QM6K place compared to last year's QM7? Better in so many ways, beginning with shadow detail. Definite improvement, absolute improvement off angle. And color accuracy out of the box, much better. And as I listed and going through the differences, I realized there's only one place that the QM7 is slightly better. Tone mapping of bright specular highlights, right? It has more dimming zones, so it's more similar to the Bravia 9 in that respect. But everything else, QM6K is the better TV. Now, if you need that extra shadow detail and you can't afford Sony's flagship, right, or a Samsung flagship, both Sony and Samsung flagship LCD TVs do really well near dark shadow detail, or get an OLED TV. So if you don't worry about burn-in, right, you're watching just normally lit content, not super bright, not static images, don't need bright sports or gaming, OLED TVs are one of the best for near black shadow detail, and it's less expensive than the more flagship Bravia 9 or the top of the line Samsung QN95F, 95D. For a few $100s more, the LG B4 or the Sony A75L will get you that near perfect shadow detail. All in all, TCL definitely chose the right corners to cut. I can't complain. Now you tell me, is the TCL QM6K good enough for you? And if not, what about the QM7K? That review is coming as well, and maybe it will get even closer to the Bravia 9. Until next time, stop the FOMO.